Hey, what's up? This is Sifu Cuddle, and you're listening to Kung Fu Podcasts. Now kick back and relax as your host, T.W. Smith, takes you on another insightful journey into the world of martial arts.
Exploring the culture, the adventure, and the impact of martial arts. And I'm your host, T.W. Smith. How to put the squeeze on self-care in martial arts. Learning to use the tools that are already at your disposal. The pandemic has created a massive surge of need and awareness of self-care. Google reports that there's over a 250% increase of self-care searches over the past year. And how can you put the squeeze on all of that? If this is your first time to the program, welcome. You're in the audience of some of the finest and sharpest martial artists in the world. People that put in a great deal of sweat, a great deal of research and care into honing their craft. Why is the topic of self-care so important? The Los Angeles Times has an article written by Jennifer Conlin titled The $10 Billion Business of Self-Care. That was written in May 2019. Who would have known that by the end of 2020, that self-care represents a $450 billion industry? According to research at ASD Market Week, nearly 9 out of 10 Americans, it was actually 88%, actively practice self-care. And 1/3 of those consumers have increased their self-care behavior during this past year. Self-care spans many generations, because 44% of millennials, those folks that were born between 1981 and 94, practice self-care. 57% of the baby boomers, that's 1946 through 64, that is where I fall in, they practice self-care. Then there's also 64%, and those are the people that were born from the early 1930s to 1945. So this isn't just about ourselves, it's also about an understanding of how self-care can help you market some of your specific martial programs. If you understand what aspects of self-care and how many people are looking for it, then you can distinctly know what you are already providing as a beacon of improvement for them. As of March 2021, the hashtag self-care has 43.7 million posts on Instagram. When I checked earlier this month, there was also 1,000 tweets per hour on self-care. Facebook has a massive number of posts and a huge community set up for the very topic. People want to know how to take care of themselves, and in many cases, your martial arts could provide over half of it every week. If you regularly market in your community the benefits, not the features of the martial arts, you will convert someone from being interested to being really motivated. The key is to be able to hit the right chord that brings their attention. After this COVID pandemic situation, everything is different. It's a new playing field. If your marketing doesn't include what people are looking for, you're probably going to be done pretty quick. Another big component of all this is time. Everybody's looking how they can save minutes here, there, or not having to put one more thing on their schedule. And what you can offer is a very large encompassing, in fact, 16 different things I've identified in self-care that you can do in one swoop of time that others actually often neglect and then they pay for heavily later. This whole podcast was stimulated by an article I saw as I was checking out of the grocery store in Health Magazine. They had an entire special on self-care. There may be some variation between what is self-care. Let's try to define it for what we're going to do in this program. Self-care has 8 areas of application by many folks' standards: is physical, psychological, emotional, social, professional, environmental, spiritual, and financial. Self-care starts with you. Self-care are the things that you do regularly, that you initiate, and that you carry out. Some struggle with the process of self-care. Over the many years in healthcare, I have witnessed many reasons that people don't practice self-care. In the older days, let's say through the mid-'80s, it was often just because we didn't know any better. We didn't have the internet and everything else that we have today. That was one. And plus, if you lived in a rural community, it was really rural, right? You didn't have a lot of the health magazines right sitting there. We relied on our customs and our wise tales. For example, an apple a day keeps the doctor away. Or, Grandpa always said if you take a little teaspoon of apple cider vinegar every morning, it'll help keep you healthy. And in many cases, these things are true, but that's all we had. There are some folks that are just lazy. Those are the ones who are not going to do it no matter whether they know it, no matter what's happening, until they have what I call God's hand come in and adjust their lives. However, I've also met many good people that are too selfless. They're okay with self-care. They want to do it. But they can't take care of themselves until they know that their teenage daughter is well taken care of. Everyone else comes first, and then they will put themselves in a caring position. That's going to create an entirely different problem, and unfortunately, it's also passed down as a standard. A live example of it is for when there's turbulence in an airplane and the air masks fall. They tell you specifically, make sure that you get yours on first. Care for yourself first, then others second. I also had a mom one time who was suffering with cancer. She was in the battle of it, but she couldn't seem to unattach herself from the stress. So I was trying to teach her some meditation, to do some other things. So I taught her the Buddhist, be safe, be well, and be happy meditation. Then she came back at the end of the week telling me how hard that was for her, and she couldn't do it. I didn't understand why in the beginning because, it's got 3 parts. See yourself safe, well, and happy. See people that you care about safe, well, and happy. And then see others that you're challenged by safe, well, and happy. Well, that's the one that always got me. It bit me in the butt. So I naturally assumed that's what she struggled with. And she said, no, that's not it at all. The fact is I can't see myself safe, well, and happy until I see my son and my husband safe, well, and happy. That's a dilemma that I had never thought about. And I know that sounds like I'm a selfish bastard, and that might be partially true, but I never thought about not being able to see yourself safe, well, and happy first. So let's look at some of the things that we are already doing in self-care that you could apply directly to any conversation or marketing or your social media posts. Mental health. Mental health is how well your mind processes and understands information and experiences. Now compare that to emotional health, which involves your ability to manage and express the emotions that arise from what you have learned and experienced. Good way to think about it is Maslow's hierarchy of needs. Then we have spiritual health, which involves finding your life's purpose, finding that deep meaning in your life. It includes finding faith. Spiritual health is literally just integrated into traditional martial arts, isn't it? You always have your beliefs challenged, and you have to have some faith in yourself if you're going to accomplish anything. So right off the bat, there are 3 areas that martial arts serves as a source of self-care. One of the areas that we all practice as well is we learn to look inward. And I'm not talking about spa day, brunches, or skin masks, but a deeper understanding of how your brain and body functions. That's what we mean by looking inward. According to the nonprofit organization Mental Health America, 20% of Americans, 45 million people, are experiencing a mental illness in the year 2020, with 10.3 million of those also having serious suicidal thoughts. As a parent, I'm really paying attention to my son, for example, because the adolescents 14 to 18 years old at this time are going through a pandemic. Their lives are literally being pulled apart at the seams. They're being forced into isolation. Dreams are being ripped away. Life and relationships that they have known are being flipped and shredded. And they're going to be at a much higher risk for suicidal thoughts and actions in the years to come. Some things that you can do to promote self-care and provide to your students and to yourself is learn to laugh. Encourage your students to laugh and laugh a lot yourself. Be happy in the process. Some people just beat themselves up. They show up to a martial arts training hall and it's like they've shown up for their job. It doesn't help you to get better If you're judging yourself like some boss does at work, learn to find a balance between the seriousness of what you practice with other people's sometimes safety in your hands and having fun with them. Another act of self-care is acknowledge your students and have them acknowledge themselves. Acknowledgement of self is a big deal. Patting them on the back and guide them a little bit more to acknowledging what they have done. Or perhaps not as well, but they still acknowledge that they have made progress, that they're doing a little better than they were before. Martial arts is always a process, isn't it? It is never a destination. There's no time, oh yeah, that's it, I'm done. No, we're all trying to improve. We're all trying to make small gains, but sometimes we forget where it was we came from. If you want to promote your traditional martial arts as a part of self-care, it's got to be a little less formal than being all about your belt or all about your stripe. Develop the culture that we call a no-guilt practice. You know, by the fact that you showed up today and the fact that you're putting in sweat, it's a good day already. If you come and practice, it's always a better day. Build on that. Another piece of self-care that you're probably practicing in your martial arts is encouraging people to speak up for themselves. During isolation, who are you speaking to? And I mean literally. Most people have learned to mentally shut down because they've been in isolation. Unfortunately today, most people are speaking up through email, through text, through liking or disapproving of some post. They've forgotten how to stand up and verbalize themselves and express themselves in a productive manner. We want to instill a culture that for folks who are even asking a question or asking for help is positively received, or even just say to them, thank you for asking. So as a different part of self-care, one of the things that we also find is that solitude is power. For some, getting social is important, but not for all of us though. Sometimes we need our me time. According to Dr. Copeland at Carleton University, solitude can also bolster creativity and is good for empathy. It helps us create concern and appreciate others more. So look at that balance, the difference between being isolated and forced to be isolated, and then being public or involved with others all the time and being able to find some refuge for yourself. Alone time has been shown to help you find new answers, new directions, or see a bigger picture as long as it's in a healthy context. Martial arts is one of the few things that alone time is literally like a natural component of success. Your forms in kata, your time in Longstaff or Mukjung training are all good examples of solitude time. And according to Stanford research, your ability to think creatively improves significantly while you're moving. We do that all the time in our martial arts, don't we? A little solitude and motion, promoting creative thoughts. So when you're evaluating the purpose of your solo forms, you can link up practical applications, but you can also look into a bigger picture of one's overall well-being.
Here at the 14-minute mark, we had a mic catastrophe. It just died on me. So if you notice a little difference in the tone, it's not your headphones and it's not me. It was just that we had to get new equipment. So anyway, we're back up and running as we always do here in the martial arts. We don't lay down. We just find a new way to get up. Here we go. One other important component of training martial arts is in the old traditions of allowing the forest to be your training hall. Get into nature is part of good self-care. One of my pet peeves in martial training is always taking place on a matted floor with a gi, for example, or some sort of uniform. I love my interview of Hanshi Dokpiri, where he explains his submergence in Okinawan karate in the 1940s. They didn't even have shirts. His pants had big holes in them, and the dirt was their mat. That's absolutely perfect. In 2019, research showed that 2 hours a week in nature is directly linked to improved feelings of well-being and life satisfaction. My students and I, just like Sifu Chen required of us, every Saturday practice was outside by a lake and in the forest. And usually at least one during the week was also outside. Get outside, get natural, get outside of your comfort zone to renew your martial arts training. While you are out there, tune in. Use all of your senses. Some of my favorite meditations are when we activate all the senses. To do that best while you're outside, experience the sunshine on your face, the scent of the ocean breeze or the lake. Pay attention to the details with every sense, not just with your eyes. Self-care also includes staying away from stuff. For example, avoiding the versions of mental drama. For example, the projecting motive. When you're using your senses in nature, it makes you feel good things. But when you start creating a negative narrative to an unknown story, the clinicians call it projecting motive onto someone. And usually when you do that, it isn't good. Professor Brown of Houston refers to it simply as the story that I'm making up. Another version of mental drama is excess guilt. When you have to do something that is difficult, for example, to punish or to deny someone, or to turn down their request, it is natural, and I would say healthy, to have a little remorse or guilt for having to do so. A thimbleful, though, not a whole bucket full. If you struggle with potentially hurting someone's feelings, focus on the greater good and the reasons that you're having to do it. And the last version of mental drama that you can sidestep if you can is the crappy what if. What if people to death? I hate that, right? If you're drawn to the worst case scenario, think it through. You can always figure out how to deal with your worst case scenario. I'm looking forward to this section because it is the martial arts spirit. What is martial arts without spirit? Have you seen someone like just going through something and you could tell their spirit wasn't in it? Spirituality refers to an individual's search for a life's meaning and a purpose behind what they do. Your martial arts provides you a chance to have purpose, to be physically and mentally engaged with a reason for what you're doing. For some, martial arts is just part of their fabric, isn't it? It's part of their purpose. Ian Abernathy's a good example. Ando Mers was another good one. Gretchen Carlson is also another wonderful example. For many others, the process of martial arts is what helps puts them into position to find their purpose. This is about learning to become self-aware, for example, personal development, and exploring one's potential. Those sorts of things you do as exercises regularly in martial arts, and you can learn to apply that to find your purpose in other places in your life. This is usually the phase where we begin to move from being externally motivated to intrinsically motivated. Picking the right martial arts for you is key, but most of them, if they're in the traditional fashion, will also ask you to start to explore yourself just as much as exploring the martial art. When things aren't working out the way we want, we go to the next part of self-care. We roll on. Our ability to grow, to be resilient, is an immeasurable trump card in our ability. If I have to choose between working with someone who is really talented and someone who doesn't quit, it's a no-brainer. Always learn and grow. I really enjoy the lyrics of a Florida Georgia Line song where they say, "May we all do a little better than the first time. Learn a little something from the worst times, and get a little stronger from the hurt times." That is the concept of rolling on. Martial arts provides us an opportunity in several spectrums to roll on. When you're faced with a hardship and start to doubt your ability to handle it, that is normal. Don't beat yourself up for moments of doubt. Gather yourself and move forward. This next concept of self-care is also something that many folks struggle with. In fact, we as instructors, if you own a martial arts studio, you're going to have someone say, "Well, I'm not really in that good a shape, or my body's in, terrible condition. Not sure if I can do that." And one a great way of saying, look, one of the things with martial arts is that we learn to make peace with our body. Sometimes we have to make sure that we're okay in our own skin. In the magazine, it was mostly focused on the harsh and often paralyzing self-criticisms one may have on the perspectives of their appearance. That is absolutely a problem that many people have to work through. There's also the component of it in martial arts that we also have to make peace with in a different realm that goes well beyond how it looks. That's the piece that I'm in the process of working on now. It's in the realm of performance. The things that we could do 15 years ago, or in my case 30 years ago, cost me much more if I tried to do them today. How many falls can I take today? This is not a peaceful acceptance for me. It's a strong piece of negotiation. I find that I'm negotiating certain things for other things. I may not be as strong and as fast or be able to take the same kind of beating, but my mental and physical stamina and balance, my coordination, and my perception responses are doing just fine and must continue to improve. But yet, there is a piece that we must always make with ourselves to improve, whether it's in how we look, how we feel, how we perform. Make peace with your body. In martial arts, too, one of the things that my sifu used to tell us all the time is the eagle that hunts two rabbits catches neither. When you try to hunt two rabbits at the same time and you keep failing, you're going to end up in the next part of the process of self-care, burnout. In this blended culture of multitasking, constant social engagement through applications, COVID isolation, work demands, and new work demands, the general lifestyle chaos that we have all had to endure over this past year, it is very easy to mentally and emotionally burn out. Your martial arts comrades are feeling exactly the same things. One thing we can develop with one another is trust. Show up to practice. Be consistent. Your consistency breeds stability. Stability breeds confidence. Not only are you consistent, you are supportive and demonstrating reliability. All the things that refresh one's core of our very being. If you are these things, then your teammates, your comrades are going to most likely be those things for you. And one of the ways we can avoid burnout is the old saying, many hands makes light work. We can learn to share, gather our resources, and focus on one thing at a time so we don't go through the process of just feeling overwhelmed. This next topic, I literally passed by the first time. I was like, because I'm not a Shangri-La person. I dislike the rosy glass suggestions that many folks promote. I am more of the utilitarian, prepare for the worst, hope for the best, and usually neither one are going to happen, but somewhere in the gradient space of the middle. After further thought, though, I decided to include positive outlooks. Traditional martial arts is filled with the cautiously optimistic self-care. You must possess it in order to continue down the path, because somewhere in your martial arts training, you're going to feel like you're challenged and not sure if you're going to make it. You've got to find a deeper pressing in yourself to keep moving forward. We all fail miserably in some places of the traditional martial arts. It's just part of what happens, and we really have to work on certain sections of it. One of the things I really struggled with was learning how to learn Chinese martial arts from a very Chinese cultural perspective. It takes a lot of mindset to just learn different things, but it's also totally different to put your mind in a whole nother mindset that you're not accustomed to. You grow up in the South of North Carolina, and then you're learning from what would other folks who were Chinese would look at me and go, I don't know if I could learn from him because he's very Chinese. He's very culturally Chinese the way he teaches. Shifting your mindset to a positive possibility can lead to many benefits, including health benefits. So you will figure out your kata or forms. You will learn how to apply that technique. One day at a time, sometimes maybe not even a step that day, but it'll be at least a change, and you will continue to make a path for yourself. Keep that positive outlook. You will figure it out. Which leads us to staying grounded. They had 5 pages on how to make time for self-care when you have none. I have one sentence. Get your ass to practice. Every day, do something, and you'll be just fine. Extending the burnout section that we just discussed, staying grounded while the rest of life spins is a skill. It is not about being nonchalant or dismissive. Staying grounded is being able to keep your place and observe what is happening at different levels. The things that are immediately around you, things that are forming around you, and the things that are just little dots out on the horizon. For me, being grounded is that simple. Just take a moment, take a breath. And when we're talking to new folks, and one of the things that you can recognize in them is they really want to learn how to be grounded. And we do that as part of your martial arts training. Be where we are now. Look at what's happening around you, and things will change. If you want to shield yourself from sin, focus on doing right. If you want to shield yourself from chaos, focus on your routines. As we bring this to a close, think about some of the modern simple tasks that you could also add to your regular lifestyle that may extend past the martial arts, but it's also good for you in general. For example, substituting afternoon coffee for a cup of tea, driving to work with the windows down and maybe just quiet silence, unless you were planning to listen to me, and of course, then you just turn it on. But that's a great time to remind yourself of all the gifts that you have in your life. Most importantly for you is to remember that you have as much time as what is important to you. Through the course of any week, blocking out 3 or 4 segments, even if it's just 10 to 15 minutes, is nearly always doable. It's also a really good idea to move your body in a way that feels good to you. Occasionally go through something quickly or slow it down to be smooth, and do it for yourself. Not just for sensei or Sifu, but for you. Just go through it for yourself. Make yourself feel good. Occasionally take a break. If you push too hard, you create frustration. We call it bending nails. That's when you go past the part of motivating yourself to starting to paralyze yourself. Take a break. Walk away and come back in a few minutes. And then lastly, set some boundaries. How much you hang around someone voluntarily is a you call. Just because you like someone as a friend doesn't mean they're necessarily healthy for you. You've got to be able to balance those things out. So set some boundaries on who you're spending time with and how much that is. Now that you understand as an instructor what people are in the communities looking for and how you can serve them, you can put together your own marketing social media pieces, or you can go out to the community and share things. Or when you have the opportunity to sit with the prospect and someone who's interested, you can talk to them at a whole different level if that's the language they want to hear. So, very quickly, we looked at mental health, spiritual health, emotional health, physical health, martial arts as a source of self-care. We looked inward, encourage your students to laugh, acknowledge your students and have them acknowledge themselves. Be less formal than belts or stripes. Learn to speak up for yourself or have your students speaking up for themselves. Remember that solitude is power, but not too much. Let the force be your training hall. Avoid the mental dramas of projecting motives, excessive guilt, and the crappy what if. The martial arts spirit. Learn to roll on and practice making peace with your body. Avoiding burnout, keeping the positive outlooks while you stay grounded. Have some modern, simple tasks like listening to Kung Fu podcast and having a cup of tea, and have different ways to practice that make you feel good and make you feel energetic. And take all of that and share it with a friend. Thank you for taking your time and spending your day with me. I look forward to talking with you again very soon.